I want to ask two or three of you who might. We're going to open this up for conversation for about 25 minutes now, and I'm going to call on you. But I also, if you want to get into the conversation, please raise your hand. I'll do the best I can to recognize you. But we want to get started on a conversation, sort of an overture to the workshops, so that you can begin to get a flavor of the conversation that is coming, and some of you can jump right in. But I'd like to first ask about this preparation gap, and ask, if I might, Tom Lazel of Kentucky and Tom Meredith of Georgia. Tom Lazel is here, I believe, right here, sir, about how well prepared students are coming out of high school now. How prepared are they for community colleges and for four-year schools?
Not well.
Yeah.
Show that. I think those of us in the post-secondary sector bear a large part of the responsibility for that. In our failure to be clear about what's expected to be successful in college.
And what do you think, that raises a good point about the post-secondary folks getting more engaged in this conversation with the high school. Governor Warner said in the press conference today, one of the things he found as governor was that the K-12 world really doesn't talk very much to the college world.
Well, I think we're going to have to do a lot better job of that than we have in the past. In our state, in Kentucky, we've organized P16 councils where we try to bring elementary, secondary people together with post-secondary representatives to deal with the problems that are common to us both. But these are hard efforts to get started. They're hard to sustain, but we're going to have to do it.
Who's resisting? Where's the resistance?
I think it's just there's a lot of inertia in the system. It's new. It's something different. We've got different cultures, different mandates in these two sectors, but we've got to keep at the effort, because if we don't, these statistics that you showed on the screen here a few minutes ago, the next time you come together, or 5 or 10 years from now, there's still going to be a downward trend. So we've got to find a way to get the two sectors together. We need to get the political leadership and the business leadership to help us do that. You can't overstress how important this is. This is truly, as has been said for many years, all one system. Okay. And it has to be a seamless system, and we have to both care about and both participate to the fullest extent we can in discharging our responsibilities for that system.
Yeah, just one more word here. It's notable that you say that, because Kentucky has won all sorts of awards for reforming its K through 12. Kentucky's been a state that has been right at the forefront of trying to change K through 12, and has done a good job with it. But yet you're really recognizing how far we still have to go.
Kentucky's done a wonderful job. I'm not a Kentuckian, but I came here. I came to Kentucky because of what they have done, and I give them great credit. But even for all they've done, the scope of where we have yet to go is tremendous.
Tom Meredith, please.
David, what we see is a great disparity in the kinds of students we're getting. We have some that are some of the brightest we've ever got, but at the same time we're receiving kids who can't make it. They don't have the talent or the background at all to make it. We're very strong in the P16 effort in Georgia, and so we're working hand in glove on a day-to-day basis, but our K-12 system needs a greater force, if you will, or strength behind them, the authority, to direct these schools in a greater way in order to help these students be prepared. Mm-hmm. Partnership is the only answer. We can't do this alone in higher ed. K-12 can't do it by themselves. Both of us together can only go so far. If communities don't rise up and say enough is enough, we want our students to do better, we're going to do better, if no other reason for an economic factor, then we're not going to move forward.
Terrific, thank you. Rufus Glassford, coming here, sir, from Phoenix, where you run one of the largest community college systems in the country.
Yes, I am pleased to be here, David, and to comment on this issue. In Arizona, we're well aware that approximately 30% of the freshmen who start at our state universities are not there by the first semester of the second year. And in our community colleges, that number is even higher. It's close to about 40%. We're looking at the P20, which will take it through graduate school as a concept.
P20.
P20. It's an expansion on the P16, pre-kindergarten through graduate school.
As a parent, that's a little daunting. Go ahead.
Well, it may be daunting, but it's necessary. I believe that what we're looking at right now is this notion of culture in silos. We still have the silos of institutional sectors that we need to deal with, and we need to break down those silos. We need to understand that we don't have sufficient resources. We need a governor, which I believe we have in Arizona, that is supportive of education. We need a legislature that will do the same. We also have a group in Arizona now which is our business group, which is about 100 of the largest CEOs in the Valley who are supportive of education. And as business educators, we also have a similar group in southern Arizona that are very supportive of education, and we're now trying to talk about how can we be systemic in our approach. How can we begin to look at this notion of P20? And as a matter of fact, there's discussion right now in terms of Arizona State University and the Maricopa Community Colleges getting together with Phoenix Union High School, Phoenix Elementary in downtown Phoenix and forming a P20 Petri dish, an opportunity to have a campus that allows us to work together and drop down some of these walls and try and make sure that it works. And do a pilot that says we can share resources, we can share faculty, we can get the city involved, and the mayor is supportive and the governor is supportive, and we believe we have an opportunity to make a difference. But it will take time. But it means reaching down into that community. This will not work without the support of parents, without making parents part of the solution as well, because we cannot do it alone. It's going to require a change in priorities.
Yeah. Do you have any sense, you're talking about people who come on to community college and how many are unprepared, how much remedial work you have to do. What about the third who don't even finish high school? How do we get to them so that they finish and that they're ready to go to a community college?
Well, we have a group which we identify as those kind of lost souls as well. And we have a program which is called Achieving a College Education Program. And what we do there is we reach down into the high school and identify students in their freshman and sophomore year. And we go to required classes, and we sit and we talk about this opportunity of bringing parents together with students, which is a commitment on the weekend. A commitment to be part of a program that allows students to find out, for whatever reason, they may not be students who really lack the intelligence, but they lack the desire or don't have the family support or don't have the resources. We are working in the community to raise resources, and we found some entrepreneurs who are willing to give us some dollars that will allow us to incent and pay for these individuals. For $600 a year, a student will start as a junior and work through as a senior, and we match that with college funds. And we have students now that are graduating who never thought about college, who graduated from high school with as many as 24 college credit hours.
Interesting. That's interesting.
And that's a program that we believe brings the family, and the family needs to come on Saturdays as well. So there's commitments of bringing the family along. And what that has done in Arizona has also brought in families of individuals who have never attended college, never thought. They're the first ones in their families to go. And they also now are bringing in their brothers and sisters, and the parents are beginning to go back.
Right. Thank you. Arlene Ackerman, San Francisco. I wanted to ask you about the preparation gap in urban schools. Please.
Well, it's certainly evident in my work in San Francisco. I think it begins long before kids get to high school, though. I believe it begins. It's not that I don't think we can certainly do a lot more in high schools, and we certainly need to redesign them using the 3 R's that Bill Gates talked about. But we need to look at what happens long before. I mean, it's a systems problem, and it's not the children who we should blame. It's the larger system that deals with not only a lack of focus on common standards and expectations for all children that starts very early on, but equity issues that are, very evident to me in my work as a superintendent, as well as accountability issues.
Right.
I heard this morning, it's obvious that it's there in my work, not only in San Francisco, but my whole career has been in urban education, in urban centers. But it's a lot more complex than the discussions that I've heard today. And we have to start very, very early on. In fact, in San Francisco, we started with a new concept called Dream Schools. We're starting with preschool children and bringing their families in, bringing the entire community in, letting preschool children and their families know these will be first-generation college graduates. Instead of room numbers, we have college names of colleges above the doors. It's bringing in the entire community, as someone just said, but it has to start very early on. And my work has been focused not only at the high school end, but at the preschool. And I just see these three issues of low expectations for certain kids, which means that you don't have the expectations and the standards in for all kids, but this issue of equity within the system and outside the system, and accountability for everybody in the system, everybody.
Right. What many of us are puzzling over is that we seem to have made enough progress that if you look at the international comparisons among young children, at the 4th grade level, American students do very well compared to children from other countries. By the 8th grade level, there's been some slippage, and by the 12th grade, there's been a lot of slippage. And we seem to be getting better at the lower end, but we haven't solved a lot of the problems that follow. What you're suggesting is, even at the lower end, there are a lot of seeds planted which come back to haunt you later.
Absolutely, because young people in many of our urban school systems, they start kindergarten behind. And to ignore that you have to start earlier.
Right.
And by the time many of these young people get to high school, they're behind. And so we're trying to play catch up. I think you have to do both, and they certainly need a lot of remediation. We talked about that. But in addition to remediation, we need enrichment and acceleration also. Young people do well in college because they've had a variety of experiences. And what we're working on now is looking at how we not only remediate but accelerate and provide those enrichment experiences that we know will allow young people to be successful in college. It's a very complex set of issues, and what I hope we don't do and what I hope we will do today is to talk about how this comes together.
Right. Let me ask you, do you agree with Bill Gates' fundamental point that this is basically an issue of political will?
Absolutely. I absolutely do. And it's interesting to me, and I'm sitting next to two of my superintendent colleagues, how many times the discussions and the issues that we deal with are not about the children and what's in the best interest of children. It's adult focused. And until we get our central focus is on young people and the young people we serve, and I mean not all of them, not some of them, but all of them. It takes the political will and the mobilization of the entire community. And I'm at the point now where I think, you might have said it, that, or somebody said it recently, that it takes the entire community, and parents have to get upset to say enough is enough. But it's a battle every day, it seems to me, to do what we know we can do. But it does take mobilizing everybody, all of the resources, if we're going to return to that #1 spot.
Thank you. I'd like to ask Art Ryan about the costs here of this system as we now find it. It was striking that Bill Gates didn't talk to us about the economic costs, but rather talked about it in moral terms. And talked about the equity issues. Jennifer Granholm was unfortunately had to step out for a moment, but they've done a study in Michigan on that. I hope that she'll share in the workshop and you all can get more on it. But Art, what about the economic costs?
Well, they're extraordinary. We measured it in the state of New Jersey, and we stopped counting when we got into the tens of millions of dollars.
Tens of,
Tens of millions
right.
of dollars in terms of the lost earning power, as well as the money that the business community must spend in terms of helping our kids. What we've learned is that, we've advanced a lot through technology and other measures, and that what we once considered advanced skills that you needed to go to college are quite similar to what you need to work today, even out of high school. That the low-paying manufacturing job, which allowed people maybe 2 decades ago to raise a family and to be successful, just don't exist. It's less than 10% of the jobs in the country. So you need that strong foundation in math and science and reading. But importantly, you also need to be able to analyze data, sort through the information, and communicate effectively, things that we talk about in so-called advanced programs. So there's money in the system. I don't suggest there isn't additional money needed at times, but there's an enormous amount of money in the system if reapplied to the issues that hopefully we'll address at this summer. The summit can go a long way to paying some of the things that we have to get done in the high schools today.
Thank you. Let's turn, if we might, to the effort now to start the search for solutions, and especially focus on your next workshop, and that is setting standards. Increasing the rigor of what's expected within high schools, and also raising the standards, the bar for what one is expected to know upon graduation. And if I might, Governor Huckabee, turn to you and ask you, sir, about you've got one of the most interesting reforms that's underway in the country. It's something called SmartCore, and it's an attempt to you've been changing the requirements for what students actually have to study, been raising the requirements within the high school system.
Well, SmartCore essentially said that kids would have to have a 4th year of math. And we base that on a lot of the studies that have been presented even here at this summit, and will continue to be, that it's a real critical factor in the likelihood of a student going on to success in college. In addition, a 2nd year of foreign language, 4 years of English. The fact is, a lot of kids were getting to the senior year of high school, and they pretty much had completed all the course requirements for their high school diploma. They could get by with taking 1 or 2 courses and spending the rest of the time, for the most part, goofing off, which is hardly the platform from which one can succeed in college. And as we looked at what many, even of high-achieving students would do, they would go ahead and get all of their course requirements in those first 2 years of high school. By the time they got to their senior year, they pretty well could coast. 2 things happened. Number one, they weren't getting the challenges academically that they needed for the next real challenge, which was college or trade school or whatever it was. But they also were really developing some very poor habits in terms of study and attitude toward academic levels of preparation. So we think it's a critical issue, and one based on the research that has been done by not only Education Commission of the states, but by, I think, SREB and other education entities. And it was surprising to us that there was much less political pushback than we had anticipated. We thought it was going to be a true battleground, but most people recognized that it was a very important point of progress to make. The only real complaining came from the students, who had to have a significantly higher level of academic challenge when they got to high school.
Right, but it's been interesting that among the military services, when a few years ago, before the wars of recent times, when military services were faced with this question about attracting more young people, the one service that was successful was the Marine Corps, by raising their standards and making it more rigorous. And young people said, I'd like to go do that because it's tougher. And I'm just wondering whether, as students start to go through this, they begin to have some pride.
Well, they not only have pride, but the other thing they're beginning to find out, when they can take AP courses and they can go to college having already achieved a certain level of hours,
right,
it begins to occur to them that they have some skin in the game when they go to college. There's a reason for them to go, because they already are partway around the track. And we found that it's a great incentive to get those high school kids to think that college is their next step, rather than to take a year or 2 off. primarily because once they have some college credits under their belt, they realize
Right.
two things. Number one, they can do the work because they've done it successfully.
Right.
They now have college credit hours. And since they've gotten started, it's an incentive for them to continue.
Right. Jim Goodnight from North Carolina. North Carolina has started incorporating more college-ready courses into the high schools in the last few years. Is that working out reasonably well from your point of view?
I think so, yes. Quite a few AP courses there. I guess one of the questions of AP courses, of course, is help for funding of the cost of the testing that goes on is one of the issues. You know, at Cary High School, which my wife and I founded some years ago, this issue of making courses a lot more rigorous and a lot more tougher is something that we do. As a matter of fact, the first 3 months or so of a new student, we get lots of complaints from the parents about how hard this school is. And then after 3 months, it stops, and everybody is fine. It's just that initial shock. But we have a tremendously rigorous program, and every single graduate of Cary Academy has gone on to college.
Oh, that's really interesting. I wanted to ask Rick Mills in New York, who is, of course, very closely associated with the Regents exams in New York, and they've been raising the standards on those, how that is working out in terms of graduation from New York. It's still controversial.
I'm not so sure it's controversial any longer. There has been quite a lot of challenge in the last few years, but the youngsters have pretty much convinced people. The ninth grade that entered in 2000, 67% passed all their courses locally and their exams, their 5 Regents exams, and they graduated. 12%, just under 12% dropped out. There are a lot of other kids who were still enrolled. We think by the 5th year it'll be 75%. We noticed that the youngsters who dropped out very seldom even took a Regents exam. In other words, the old shibboleth that the exams are too tough, the standards are too rigorous, and they will cause people to drop out is clearly not the case, because the people who left never even had a chance to challenge those.
I see. What about the graduation rate itself? When you raise the standards for graduating from high school, what impact does it have on the graduation rates? Do you get higher dropout rates, or can you essentially hold your own?
Well, like in other states, the dropout rates are highly suspect because the data systems that we had years ago are not comparable to the one we have now. We now know what happened to all 199,000 youngsters who were in that ninth grade in 2000. So we didn't.
And what was the dropout rate overall? Just
under 12% in that cohort. So the issue really is that these reforms that so many states like New York are carrying forward really do work for most of the kids. The
Right.
problem is that it doesn't yet work for those who get to high school and they repeat ninth grade. That's 15% of our youngsters still repeat ninth grade. That's a big improvement from several years ago, but still too high.
Right.
Youngsters who get 2 years into high school, they've never challenged a single one of the exams because they weren't ready.
Right. You look around the country at a variety of states. Where do you think, what states do you look at and say, that's a state that's like Massachusetts where the MCAS seems to be working? It seems to, by raising the standard for graduation, at first there were a lot of fears, a lot of resistance, but actually it seems to be working very well. Do you look at Massachusetts or other states then as beyond New York for examples or models?
I look at many states for various parts of what they're doing. I like what I see in Indiana. I like what I see in Ohio.
Tell us about those two and tell you why.
Well, Indiana, for example, has been thinking about what to do about youngsters who are within a point or two of meeting the standards, and there's always an issue of whether the test was on a particular day was fair enough. Should there be some kind of an opportunity for a challenge or an appeal, an opportunity to demonstrate that you really did know the work to the standard? I think that's a good idea. Massachusetts is thinking about, has done the same kind of thing. So it's also, frankly helpful to me to see that other states are trying to do what we've done. Sometimes people in New York say, well, it's already there, we've already done all this. And I want to say, well, even if that is true, even if that's true, and we have an advantage, it's a temporary advantage. So what are we going to do in the next year to stay ahead in a particular area? I like the competition.
Good. Ohio came up. Senator Bob Taft is here and was cited as one of the great leaders of this effort. Governor, tell us about the experiences in Ohio, how you respond to this whole question of raising standards.
Well, our first challenge in Ohio was actually to have standards, because we didn't really have good standards when I came in, and Achieve helped us to identify that fact. We now, with the leadership of our School Superintendent Susan Zellman, who's here with me, we have now very clear, highly rated standards across the country, and we're preparing a lot of materials and curriculum guides and so forth, and a lot of training to help our teachers and our students meet those standards. Now, at the same time, we're way behind New York from the standpoint of, what is the bar for graduation. We currently have a test that basically measures 8th grade skills.
That's your test for graduation, 8th grade.
Today, but we are implementing a test that will apply to this year's sophomores, which will be at a 10th grade level. We feel that's going to be a significant challenge, and we are working hard to try to prepare and help our schools get through there. But it's a measure of progress, that we have standards, that we're raising the bar, but it's also a measure of how far we still have to go in Ohio to get to the goal of this summit.
Do you think the day will come when we can actually have 12th grade standards for students graduating from the 12th grade?
Absolutely. We have to go there, in my view. The first challenge is just to figure out how we can align and get colleges to express more clearly, as I think someone just said, what is expected of students who go to college in our state schools and universities, where currently more than 1 out of 3 of those students is enrolled in a remedial math or remedial English course. And I'm talking about students coming right out of high school, not mid-career people coming back.
Terrific. Let's turn to the state of Oklahoma then. Governor Henry, on this question of higher education communicating more clearly, just as Governor Taft has said, to the high schools and to the communities, what's expected, what they need.
Well, I think the key is a great partnership between higher ed and common ed. In Oklahoma, we have a graduation rate, a high school graduation rate of 79%. We have one of the highest high school graduation rates in the country, yet only 36% of our students are ready for college, and that's still greater than the national average, but it's too low. We have begun to engage the business community, and with the help of the business community, we are attempting to raise expectations. And one of the major education reform programs that I put forth this year, it centers around testing, and I want to have consequential testing both in the 8th grade as well as throughout high school. Now that's caused quite a stir and quite a contention in Oklahoma, but it's important that we really focus on raising these standards. We already have a consequential test in the 8th grade for literacy. If you don't pass the literacy portion, you don't get your driver's license. And guess what? Kids are passing the literacy portion now. So we think this is an extremely important way to really raise expectations, and we believe that the kids will meet those expectations.
Right. It's interesting. Paul Peterson, the scholar who's been studying these results a lot, argues that standards alone will bring modest progress, but if you actually apply the standard for students to move on to the next level in life, you get a lot more progress.
Yeah, and I also think
point.
The key to any kind of consequential testing is the appropriate remediation, and I know we don't like that term remediation anymore, but
we spend a lot of money on it.
But we do spend a lot of money, and we need to spend that money at the right level. If a student doesn't pass an 8th grade exam, it's not enough just to say we're going to hold you back. We need to make sure they develop the skills to pass that exam so that they can be successful in high school and later on in college.
Thank you, Governor Henry. The hour is nigh when we could continue this conversation there, but the real work, as I say, this has been an extremely helpful overture. But the real work, the real symphony is going to take place in the workshops. So we're going to turn to you. Do you want to have a final word here, Governor Warren?
Well, let us first of all thank David Gergen for getting us started. Well done. 3 quick points. I think what Governor Henry just said in terms of kind of interesting idea. You don't pass the literacy exam, you don't get the driver's ed, you don't get the driver's license. I got a 15-year-old daughter. I tell you, that would get her attention. But I think coupling that with remediation, as David said, there's a lot of going on in remediation, but particularly as we get to high school and identify these students before the senior year, one of the things I hope we get some chance to visit on here is best practices in terms of remediation in high school, something very, very important, how you target those students and help them. Second question, we heard from Mr. Mills and some others, and Brad and others, about what graduation rates are. And one of the goals of this year-long work is, and we're not going to get it done here, but is to get that common definition on a dropout rate and a graduation rate. And one of the tools that we now have, and there are governors and policymakers all over here, and I know there are probably all kinds of different opinions on NCLB, but one thing we all ought to agree on in NCLB, it is pushing us to get better data. And Lord knows, continuing to push, and Bill Gates made mention of this as well, the issue of data and parsing through that data about what happens to those ninth graders who don't finish, what really is the graduation rate, something terribly important and something that we can accomplish. Final point that I wanted to make here, just to stir the pot a little bit, there was one of your earlier questions, David, was, how do you engage higher ed in a better way? I would posit, and I say this with some trepidation, that one of our biggest challenges on getting higher ed involved is not so much our community colleges, but it's with our flagship institutions. Because even with all the data we've seen here, our flagship institutions still have plenty of qualified students. And it's the flagship institutions who attract the most business attention, the ones that have the most cachet, and if we could come up with some specific suggestions on how we could really challenge some of our flagship institutions, public and private, to be much more involved in this debate. One of the ways is to get articulation agreements so those credits that students pick up in Mike Huckabee schools in Arkansas or in Bob Tass schools in Ohio actually get accepted at your top flight public and private institutions in your respective states would be a real challenge. And making our flagships part of this discussion as opposed to kind of saying, hey, not really, paying lip service, but saying, not really our problem, because we still got plenty of good quality students coming along, would be something we should revisit along the way. We are going to break now. Thank again David Gergen. Thank Carrie. You only get a quick bathroom break. We're back at 3:15 in your individual session. Thank you all.